Sometimes God creates people for sole purposes. I don't have a lot of talents, but there's one thing I can do very well, and that is use common sense. We're all created by God. We're all beautiful people. I don't care what your skin color is. God made it. And for years and years and years, I've watched people argue over skin color. Yours is too dark. Yours is too light. And I always thought to myself, hey, we're all made by God. At what point do we start to understand that? And that's what drives this whole concept. We need to love each other. Love covers a multitude of sins. That was like the last commandment by Jesus, right? Just love each other. Because we're all God's people. We're all God's children. Hello, I'm Ritchie Knox, and you are tuned into Virtuous Teacher. Thank you for clicking on this content. Now, in this episode, I'll be discussing ways to access the real version of your students. It is my belief that students have to wear a mask in order to survive their surroundings, okay? And the more difficult your school is to teach at, the more likely your students have to wear masks in order to survive. We've all been students before, and we should know that, yes, there is a real version of us, the version of us that we tend to have access to when we're by ourselves. But then we have to put on these different faces or these different masks, depending on the environment that we're in. And the question is, how do you get your students to a space where they feel comfortable enough to be themselves in the classroom space? That is what we'll be discussing in this episode. Before I do, I would like to remind you that you can access my content, more Virtuous Teacher episodes via YouTube, where you can watch the content, and also anywhere that you get your podcast, where you can just listen to the content. Also, you can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and places like that. And most importantly, feel free to check out the descriptions area where you can find ways to support and connect with me in my initiatives. Okay. Now, I think that anytime you're trying to get students to buy in or get students to feel more comfortable, so comfortable that they feel good about showing who they really are, which is really intelligent people. How do you get them there? I think that you have to go about it in a very, very particular way. And step one for me is starting off extremely sensitive to their behaviors and then releasing tension as you see improvement. And allow me to explain, because I know it might not come across as clear as I can think of it. And what I mean by that is, when you start off with this particular process, anything that contradicts the environment you would like to sustain, you have to be extremely sensitive to it. For example, if you're saying that for your classroom, no cell phone volume should be allowed, if you're saying that no profanity should be allowed, then you have to be hypersensitive as it relates to correcting anything that goes against those procedures. And here's an example of what I mean by that. If a student says hell or damn, I didn't know, something like that, to the most, to the common person, hell and damn are not really the most terrible words that a student can use. But when you're trying to sustain a certain culture and trying to have students buy in and trying to access the best versions of your students, you have to be hypersensitive to even those type of things. And when you do that, it shows the student that they don't have much wiggle room to be anything other than what you are asking or expecting your students to be. If you're saying to your students, I want you to be scholars, I want you to use professional language, I want you to be paying attention, I want you to take notes, when you have to enforce those policies and procedures with hypersensitivity. That means that if you're saying, I want everyone to, if this is the culture you want, I want all students within my classroom space to pass with a 70% or higher in the class. You have to be hypersensitive to everything going on in your class, not just the verbiage, but the physicality or the physical aspects of your class. If students are doing the wrong things physically, mentally, spiritually, you have to be hypersensitive to everything that's happening because you have to make them uncomfortable when they're doing the wrong thing. If you want to know how this looks and feels when it's done correctly, it's being in your own classroom. Let's say you're a student in your own class. The only thing that feels good doing, or the only thing that you feel good doing, is doing what's expected, doing what's right. You want it to be extremely uncomfortable doing the wrong thing. And I mean, so uncomfortable that you just don't do them. I'll give you an example further. In my classroom, it's kind of an unspoken thing that I expect my students to behave themselves like smart people. That is an unspoken rule in my class. And anytime one student feels courageous enough to go against that procedure, i.e., being the best version of yourself, when one student decides to do that, it is painfully obvious, right? That one student sticks out like a sore thumb because everyone is going in the same direction by way of consistency. And me enforcing and reinforcing and reinforcing what my expectations are for the students. So when one student decides to use profanity, it's actually a big shock because no one really does it. When one student decides to walk out of class without permission, it's like a crime, reportable to the police, that type of crime. When one student decides to be disrespectful to me, it's almost like you're breaking a law. It's like you're disrespecting the president because I've put in day after day after day of reinforcement and, following my own procedures myself, I've done it so long that now it's like a routine. And that's when you know you're doing it right. When you've constructed an environment that is so routine as it relates to doing the right thing, doing your expectations. It's so routine that doing anything other than that is both uncomfortable and odd. I don't know if that comes across clearly through the sound waves. But I do know it makes sense to me. All right. And if it does make sense, throw a like on the video, throw a 5-star rate on the podcast for me. I appreciate it. But the point is, you have to be hypersensitive to things that are contrary to what your expectations are. That's probably how I should have said it the first time. All right. Next, you want to create sustainable class routines because predictability removes anxiety. And the removal of anxiety promotes confidence. You got to think about it. You're trying to access the most intelligent, best version of your students. And in order to do that, they have to be comfortable. They have to be confident in who they really are. Otherwise, you're going to get somebody else. And when you create sustainable routines, think about it. Every time I go to Mr. Knox's class, I know everything that will happen. Now, the lessons will change. The things that you teach will change, but the routines will stay the same. I know that he is going to close his door when the bell rings, not a second later. I know that the first thing he's going to do is attendance. I know he's going to give me the opportunity to turn in makeup work. I know he's going to call my name if I miss the quiz. I know that after he finished those procedures, we're going to go and talk about homework. I know that after we talk about homework, we're going to start our lesson. I know that he's going to give me 3 or 4 reminders of how much time we have before the class is over. I know that once the class is over, he's going to ask me to clean up my space. And I know that when the bell rings, he's not going to hold me. He's going to let me go immediately. These are routines that I enforce and I practice every single class. And when it becomes routine, that removes the anxiety. Most bad behaviors stem from anxiety. The student is nervous, or better yet, they don't even know what you're teaching. They're hearing it, but they're not receiving it. They're not taking it in and making it their own. And when a student doesn't quite understand the instructions because you didn't dumb it down enough, and I hate to use the word dumb it, but you didn't break it down in layman's terms enough, then what is the other option besides listening? It's usually disrupting, oftentimes. And again, even the lesson being taught in a way that is extremely understandable is a routine. It is rhythmic or a routine within my classroom space that I'm going to teach this so many different ways that even a squirrel would understand it. Okay, that is a system, a practice within my classroom space. I'm going to break down the lesson so well that you're going to understand it even if you don't want to. All right, there it is. Next, always be calm. Your calmness transfers into the students. You know, the best way to have students remove their mask is to make sure yours is off. Be yourself. Be you. Be as calm as possible as well, even if that is not you, okay? Be calm and be yourself. Those are two things that you want to do. First off, being yourself allows them to be themselves. They know you're not acting, okay? Because you know who can spot a fake person faster than anyone? A student. A student knows when you're just putting on and you're not really being your authentic self. So you might as well just be yourself. And it makes them feel more comfortable approaching you and also being themselves. Now, even if this is not you, you have to be calm. When you're calm, and I mean calm in the middle of a storm if you need to be. I mean calm when kids are acting crazy. I mean calm when profanity happens. I'm talking calm when a parent is going off in your classes outside the telephone and they watching you and the parent is going off in your right ear. I'm talking about calm no matter what. I mean calm when the principal walks in. I mean calm when things are a little off procedure. You have to be calm because from a space of calmness, you can more accurately and more, patiently address certain things. All right, I don't care if the entire class is out of their seat and walking from different space to different space. Stay calm because at the very least, you won't be stressed out once that class is over. Listen, I don't care how bad you have it. These classes run for 60 minutes, okay? They are 60-minute blocks in most cases. 60 minutes, 55 minutes. I mean, give or take, it's going to be 60 minutes per class. All right. And no matter how crazy that 60 minutes is, at some point, it's going to come to a close or a conclusion. With that being said, just be calm. All right. Because let me tell you what's worse than a chaotic environment. You also contributing to that chaotic environment by way of your actions. All right. At the very least, if you're calm, no matter how dysfunctional your environment is, at the very least, you're calm. At least we have that going for us. And the hope is that at some point, things will start to be calm as well. Your environment will start to calm down because you are the leader of the environment. And if the leader is calm, most likely the followers will be as well, because I believe that the classroom is a reflection of what the leader is. So if you're calm, the class will also at some point, somehow, some way be calm as well. And, I think it's very clear. I said this before, I'll say it again. I do think that the students take on the personality or persona of the teacher or the environment that they're in. Okay. I've had students go from one class where they're able to go crazy and do all types of things. And I think that was indicative of the leader/teacher in that classroom space who just had different procedures. But when they come to my class, the exact same students who were just going crazy in one class, they come to my class because of my demeanor, because of my expectations and the procedures and the routines I've put in place and enforced time after time and reinforced time after time after time. Because of those particular concepts and things and constructs, they're calm in my classroom, right? This is not just talk. This is real, okay? Next, this is one of my favorite ones, and I hope that you made it to this point in the video or recording. Have high expectations, okay? I'll say it again. Have high expectations of your students. Require they be their true selves in your presence, not the version they think they need to survive. Now, if you're in a school that's pretty, you know what I'm talking about, troublesome, it's pretty rough, especially in the hallways, then you know that there's going to take a little more work to actually access the real version of your students. Because let's face it, if they're intelligent, sometimes a student can be targeted because they're smart. Have you ever seen that before? I know I've been the target of bullying because I was, looked at as intelligent. And it wasn't really true. I just wasn't as bad as some of these other students because I had parents that just didn't go for it, right? And I think that these other students could sense that. And, it was very difficult to just be intelligent in these spaces. You have to, as a teacher, that is your job, to provide a space where being smart is safe. That is your number. I don't want to say number one, but fine. For the purposes of what I'm trying to say, it's one of the most important things you can do is to provide a space that is safe. All right. Not just for being intelligent, not just for learning, but just safe in general. Why? Because you're dealing with children and you're dealing with other people's children. Now, if you have kids, let me ask you a very easy question. What could be more important than the learning in your child's classroom environment? What could be more important than your child's learning in the classroom that they're in? I'll tell you what the answer is. It's their safety, right? That's the only thing that, in my opinion, supersedes education. I bit my tongue, by the way. I'm not being safe. That's the only thing that supersedes intelligence, or I'm sorry, education in a classroom space. Safety. That's the only thing. So I think that it is safe to say it is arguably your number one job to sustain and prepare and cultivate and protect a safe environment. Because if the child is safe, then now we can get to the education. Now we can do the learning. And I would go back to my point and state that high expectations has to be what you're enforcing. Do not dumb down the expectations. Yes, you take the lesson and you simplify it. Absolutely. I would never argue against that. But don't simplify the expectations. Still expect that students show the best versions of themselves. I'll tell you the easiest way to do this. If you're going over information and you know how this works, you're talking, you're lecturing, and then you have kids kind of in and out. Some kids are writing, some kids are not, some kids are on the phone. You know how this works. You know what? The expectations for them may be low, but here's how you just inject high expectations in the middle of a classroom that seems to have an imbalance with some students paying attention and some not. You cold call. Okay, you call students who are talking while you're talking, and you make them answer a question. You call students to answer questions if you see them on the phone. Now, to my surprise, sometimes these students who are having these conversations, sometimes the conversations are about things that are included or involved with the learning, and I'm always surprised. Like, oh, okay, all right, good. You are paying attention. Sometimes a kid is on the phone, but they're still listening. I'll call a student who's on the phone texting. And I'll ask a question. What are the primary colors? Oh, they're red, yellow, and blue. I'm like, oh, okay. So you're a different kind of learner. I'm not afraid of cell phones. I'm not afraid of them. Just like, I can text a little bit while I'm driving. I don't recommend it. Just like I can walk and chew gum. Some students can do that as well. They can do one thing and also still pay attention. In fact, it's easier for them to pay attention when they have something that has their immediate attention because they get bored otherwise. There's a such thing as being so smart that you get bored when things are just too, singular, right? Some students do require multi attention grabbing things going on. It happens. But I would say keep the expectations high. And here's another way to ensure that the expectations are high within your classroom space. That is to allow the kids to talk. Whoever is talking is doing the learning. I can't say that any clearer. Whoever's doing all the talking is doing the learning. So a lot of times I will cold call people, and I'm pretty infamous when it comes to my classroom. Students know that I am not going to allow you to sit there quietly. In fact, I look for students who are trying to hide behind the students that do all the answering. I know exactly how it looks. And I try to find those students. Hey, Michelle, I just asked this question to, sometimes I'll ask a question, a student will answer the question correctly, and I'll ask it again, just to a different person, just to see if they caught the answer, right? It's like, it is a terror to be in my classroom, because that you're going to have to answer questions. That's whether you are a student that likes to talk or you're a silent student. You're going to get called. And, when you call a student and they don't provide an answer, you don't destroy them and say, oh, you wasn't listening. You wasn't. No, you just say, okay, well, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. And perhaps once the answer comes out, you come back to that student and say, did you catch that? And I hope you did, because within 3 minutes, I'll be calling you to answer the exact same question. That happened today in my classroom. All right. It is a terror to be in my class because you will not be able to hide behind me talking too much, because some of our teachers, some of us, we protect students and lower the expectations within the classroom space by not stopping our talking. Like, we don't stop talking. You got to stop talking. You have to give the students the opportunity to talk, because whoever is talking is the person learning. And, at some point you have to just let it go. All right. After you've given some points out, stop what you're doing and start cold calling people. Cold calling is a terrifying thing. It's a terrifying concept. And if you think I'm lying, the next time you're at or in a teacher meeting, you know how the principal asks these random questions? Imagine if the principal started just cold calling people to make sure, one, that they were paying attention. Hey, so Mr. Knox, I just said this. Can you say what I just said in your own words? You know how terrifying it is? And you know what it does? It makes you pay attention. When you realize that the teacher or whoever is the leader of the meeting or what have you is going to expect you to talk, you have to pay attention. And this is where a lot of teachers fall short. They don't cold call. They don't stop talking. They do all the lecturing. Lecturing is fine. But I think when you're dealing with younger students, especially, you have to take these breaks within your lecturing to allow students to verbalize what you just said. If you lecture for a whole 10 minutes, without giving any student the opportunity to talk or provide feedback or opportunities to show that they understood what you were saying, I think you're doing things a little off. That's just my personal opinion, of course, my own personal preference. But keep the expectations high by way of cold calling, giving them the floor to speak and talk. And here's one of my favorite things to do. When you call a student and they don't know the answer, do not allow them to say, I don't know. That is low expectations. The expectations are, I want you to tell me the wrong answer. You have to speak. You have to say something. I don't care if it's wrong. I don't care if it's terribly wrong. I need you to say something. I need you to get in the habit of speaking out in a way that contributes to the learning environment. Some students only talk when they're disrupting the environment. Well, you know what you do? You flip the tables. You make it very, very clear that you want the entire class quiet. And for those students who are brave enough to stick their head over that hedge line, I need everyone quiet now. That's it. That's a very direct verbalization. I need every student in the classroom quiet now. Now, they're either going to do one or two things. Everyone's going to be quiet, or everyone except those who want problems are going to be quiet. For those scholars who do not stop talking when you ask them to. And let's be very clear on why they should be quiet. Number one, we're in class. We're here to learn. We're not here to joke. We're not here to get likes. We're not here to get hearts and comments and shares. This is not social media. In order for the information that I'm providing to be transferred successfully into every ear in the classroom, everyone must be quiet except for what I'm saying, because I'm here to do a job. I'm here to teach. If someone's talking with me, they're not there to do much but disrupt. Right? So you ask everyone to be quiet. You deliver your information, and then you start the cold call. All right, young lady, what are the elements of art? I just talked about them. Can you please tell me what is the T in the elements of art? I don't know. Excuse me, ma'am. I need an answer. Okay, you're in here to get smarter, and you make it very clear. See, this is one of those things you have to make sure you've already done. You have to have already made it clear that being wrong is a part of learning. Being wrong is the first step to understanding what you need to know. Right? So that should have already been established and practiced and enforced and reinforced over and over and over again, so that it is common knowledge. The more work you do up front, the easier your life gets as you go forward. Now, a lot of what I'm talking about in this episode is second nature, because I've spent 12 years with this doing the exact same thing. So now the expectation is there, right? Everyone knows the expectation. Even before they get into my class, because word travels. Oh, you have Mr. Knox? Oh, that's your teacher? You know you can't do this. You know you can't do that. It travels. You don't even have to say anything in most cases. But the point is, young lady, please tell me, what is the T in the elements of art? I don't know. Young lady, that's not I need an answer. And you wait for her to give you an answer. And she already knows that the answer starts with a T. So you say this, listen, I need an answer from you. Give me the wrong answer, but I need an answer. I don't know is not an answer, and silence is not an answer. Okay, I need something from you. And what happens is you're sustaining the expectation within the class. And then you say this, after she gives me an answer, I'm going to call you next. You just say, I'm going to call you next. You don't say who you're going to call. After she gives me an answer, right or wrong, I'm going to call you next. And what's going to happen is every student is going to look at you to see who you're talking about. And you don't give out any clues. You just keep it very random and bland. After she gives me an answer, I'll be calling you next. Right? And then she says, turtle. Turtle is clearly not one of the elements of art. But the point is, you've set the expectation that you must answer the question. You're not going to be able to sit in this classroom and just be wallpaper. You're going to contribute, and that's it. Now, after she said that, and this is a real story, another student jumped in and said the answer is texture. So you know what I did? I went back to her. I said, young lady, I'm not sure if you caught that, but you should have been paying attention. What is the T in the elements of art? With their attitude, she said texture. I said, good. Now you know the answer. All right. You have to set high expectations for your students. Don't ever allow, low expectations to dominate your classroom space. You will never find out who they really are. Okay. That's it. Now, the next one is make your classroom a safe space from bullying and poor behavior. I've already kind of talked about this, so I won't go into, deep detail. But the point is, you have to make your classroom safe. Think about it. How can a student truly be themselves if they don't feel safe when they're in your classroom? I mean, I think that's very self-explanatory. They have to feel safe when they're in there. And if they feel safe, then they feel more, open to revealing who they really are. They feel safe, being a nice kid. They feel more safe to being that person that uses positive language. They feel more safe to be that smart kid, that bookworm. But they have to feel safe, and it's your job to make sure that you do that. When I say as far as being safe from poor behaviors, when students demonstrate bad behaviors, i.e. hitting, or cursing, or talking while you're talking, anything that distracts or detracts or is contrary to the environment that you want to sustain, you have to deal with it. And it goes back to my first point. You have to be extremely hypersensitive of that. And you don't stay that way. If you're doing your job and you're addressing everything in a hypersensitive manner, eventually, eventually they'll start to catch on like, okay, I don't want to go through what I went through yesterday. So let me just chill out today. Right? That's how that works. Make your classroom safe from, bullying, poor behavior, and even things that are contrary to what your expectations are. Just go ahead and safeguard it from those things. Now, make your classroom rigorous or challenging. Listen, I am a instructor for a subject that just doesn't really get a lot of credit as it relates to rigor. It doesn't get a lot of credit as it relates to challenge. Usually my class, the expectation is everybody's going to get participation points and get a C or higher, right? But in my class, I've established that rigor is just a thing. Challenge is a thing. Yes, you can fail my class. You can fail my class with a D or E. Why? Because my class is challenging. And when students know that when they walk into your classroom space, you're going to call them. You're going to have high expectations for them. They can fail the class if they don't try hard enough. When they already know that going in, listen, it brings out it brings out something better than the real version of them. It brings out a better version of them. They realize, you know what? I don't like to answer questions. I don't like to take notes. But you know what? Mr. Knox has presented this information in such a way that I feel like I can be a better version of myself. Now, that's when you've hit the next level. That's when you leveled up as a teacher, when you have accessed the real version of your students, but even better, you've taken the real version of them and leveled that person up. Now we're in a different ballgame. And now it's just a different sport. Because now those students are showing who they really are, but now they have been inspired. That's the word. They've been inspired to now be better versions of themselves. That's crazy, right? And that's where you want it to be. Okay, it's levels to this. I mean, I think the initial level is them coming in, being somebody else. All right, but then, you get them to feel comfortable and buy in and be themselves. But then you get them to take themselves and level up. That's when you've maxed out. All right, I've seen this happen 1,000 times. I'll meet a student for the first time. They don't know who I am. Terrible thing not to know. You have to know your teachers. You have to know your surrounding. They don't know who I am, and they just belt out a cuss word just because they're used to doing that in every other class. And they run smack into a wall, and they realize, oh, snap. This is completely different from what I thought was going to happen. Because now I'm getting my phone, my parents called. Right now I'm in front of the class talking to my parents about the word I just used. I thought it was going to give me a whole bunch of fake likes, but it's just giving me a lot of problems, right? And he just told my mother everything that I said and everything I've done. Oh, crap. So the next time that student comes into my classroom, it's like, okay, I'm not doing that again. I'm not cursing again. At the very least, I'll sit here quietly. But wait a minute. Now he's calling my name. He's calling me to answer questions. I thought we was just going to be, cool with being silent and quiet. So now he's asking me to answer questions. And then I can't just say I don't know, because now he's expecting me to say something regardless. I thought calling or getting my parent call was bad. But now it's even worse because I have to answer questions. And if I don't know the answers, I look like I'm not smart. And I don't care how bad a kid is. Nobody wants to, come across as stupid. So now I have to answer questions. And in order to answer questions, I have to be paying attention. Oh, snap. Now I'm paying attention. Oh snap! Now I'm liking what I'm learning. I'm loving what he's telling me. He's enriching my brain. He's giving me new experiences. Okay, now we're in a different area. I come to class the next time. I'm not going back to version 1 of me. That's too far back. I'm not cursing. I'm not going to be called on again and not know the answer at all. I can't go back to that person. So now, not only am I paying attention, not only am I taking good notes, I'm raising my hand because I want to be different from, you see, checkmate. All right. This is what happens when you're in the classroom space with a virtuous teacher. They bring out the best version of you, which surpasses the original point for the video, which was accessing your real students. How about accessing the best version of your students? How about that? All right. Which brings me to my final point. Make the price for acting badly extremely high. Okay. You have to overdo it when your students make decisions that are contrary to the learning environment. Don't ever just give a, hey, well, you can't even touch students now. You can't even do that. You can't even do a air slap. Or you can't do anything that's like, oh, well, you know what? He just used the F word. It happened. No, every action, every word, everything that contradicts the environment that you want to sustain, which should be an environment for learning and education and scholarly behavior, anything that's contrary to that, make it high. If a student wants to pay the price for disrupting the learning environment in your class, they have to think twice. And I think that's a big problem. A lot of students are not thinking twice when it comes to disrupting their classroom spaces. It's like, you know what? She's just going to yell a little bit. Or you know what? She's going to just tell me to be quiet. Or you know what? She's going to tell me to move from here to there and I'll be able to just do the same thing over there. You have to make the price extremely high. Okay. If you curse in my class, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to call your parents and tell them exactly what you said. And then you're going to have to talk to them in front of everyone. I'm not calling when you leave. I'm not calling when I get home on my personal time. I'm going to call while I'm on the clock, while you're in the classroom space. That's right. I'm stopping the entire class. That's a high price to pay because now every eye is on you because, hey, we were 30 deep learning, what we were learning. But now the entire student body, 29 people plus you, are stopping and looking at you while you're on the phone, trying to keep up your little act, your little tough guy act. You're trying to keep that up, but your parents is not going for it. So that's a very difficult place to be in. You're on the phone with your parents who knows the real you, and then you're being watched by people who know the fake you. What you gonna do? Because you can entertain them and then go home and deal with the drama. Or you could be the real you on his phone and show your classmates that you ain't really about that life. It's a terrible place to be. So what I say is keep the price very high for students who want to break rules. And what's going to happen is their little brain is going to start coming up with these ideas. Hey, this is a good time to make a little fart noise. But guess what? That angel on the other side is going to say, he gonna have a lot to say about that. That price is too high. You got that in your pocket? I don't think you got that. Don't start writing checks that your behavior can't count, cash. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know what? Instead of making that decision, I'll go ahead and just hold that down and get up out of here safely. And maybe I'll do it in my next class. I don't know. I don't know if that is that. I don't know. But the point is, make it extremely pricey to make bad decisions in your class. And what I mean by that, phone calls home. That's my number one go-to. Write-ups. All right. Separation. If you don't know already, in my class, I have tiers. Okay. I have the general body. And then right behind that, I have 3 black chairs. That's for students who just need a little separation. Then I have behind that 3 yellow chairs. That's for students that's like really a little off, kind of off that day. Then I have a white chair far back in the corner. That's for students who just really have some problems for that day. They just really need separation. They just need to be by themselves. And then I have the equivalent, and the other side is a green chair. This chair is just like for students who just cannot be in the environment. I would remove them from the class if I could, but I am not the kind of teacher that kicks kids out of my class. I just never do that. It's a safety hazard. So I'll put them in that green chair over there. So you risk separation. You risk a cell phone call, a write-up, and, even suspension per the write-up. I mean, it's just a lot. These kids are not stupid. Like, would you rather just be quiet and follow along, or at the very least, just be quiet and act like you're paying attention? Or would you rather go through all these different hurdles as it relates to your behavior? I don't know about you, but I'm going to pick the latter. All right. So that's how you access the real version of your students. I hope that this episode was informative. Otherwise, let me know what I can do better. But no, if you did enjoy it, throw a like on it, comment, subscribe, all that, because I'm far from finished. I got a lot more things to teach, and I look forward to all the learning. Let me know if you're applying these things in your classroom and how they're working for you. I do want to know that as well. But with that being said, I will see you on the next one. and peace.